Now we move on to the second half of the evening where we present the awards. The awards will be presented by Kevin Mitchell from Genetics Department in Trinity. But I'll hand you over now to Cormac Sheridan, who coordinates the award.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks everybody for coming. Great to see you all here. I won't keep you long. Just want to thank a few people for starters. The judges play a very important role in this award, and I'm delighted to say that all three judges are here this evening with us. Anne Mulvihill, Kevin Mitchell, and Caroline Linton. Caroline and Anne especially have been sort of troopers, been with us throughout more or less the entire competition's history, and have played a vital role. And as is the case this year, we always get a subject matter expert in then on a particular theme, and Kevin has done the honors for us this year. But just in terms as well about the award winners, I'll say it every year, but I'll say it again this year. We remain very proud of all the people who won the Mary Mulvihill Award and who've also received the Judges' Commendation Awards. There's so much creativity out there and so much energy, and it's a lovely thing to be at the receiving end of it. I'm the person who kind of gets the submissions in, and you open up every year and a couple of things just pop out and kind of really are quite arresting. And but I'll leave it to Kevin to talk about this year's crop, but we remain very proud. And two of them have actually joined the association. Sadly, neither of them are able to be with us tonight. Laura Finnegan, who won the award in 2019, just became ill overnight, unfortunately, so she was just unable to attend. And Owen Murphy couldn't escape his domestic duties in Clare to join us tonight, but he won in 2021, and both have played sterling roles in the association too, and I would like to pay tribute to them too. But on to Kevin Mitchell. The theme for this year was life, and Kevin, I think, is one of the most profound thinkers in the country on that particular concept. He started off in Trinity in genetics, I think, sort of moved into sort of neuroscience in your PhD in Berkeley, and is now sort of, there's a bit of developmental biology in there as well. He's really kind of at the intersection of three complicated disciplines. So it sounds like a whole lot harder than rocket science to me. And then on top of that as well, Kevin has also kind of developed a very, very interesting layer to his work and his thought by delving quite substantially into philosophical kind of questions as well. And he's written two books that have gotten a lot of attention, both published by the Princeton University Press. Innate, How the Wiring of Our Brains Shapes Who We Are, and Free Agents, How Evolution Gave Us Free Will. And even today I was just idly Googling and came across a recent paper of Kevin's in the European Journal of Neuroscience. Beyond Mechanism, Extending Our Concepts of Causation in Neuroscience, which is co-written with Henry Potter in Trinity, who's a philosophy student. So I think there's no better person, I think, to kind of consider the questions that this year's team threw up and to present the awards as well. So it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Kevin Mitchell.
Thanks, Cormac, for that kind introduction, and thanks for the invitation. It's great to be back again. It's a wonderful chance to help celebrate Mary's legacy and be involved in actually giving out the Mary Mulvihill Award this year. So I wanted to start with a few sort of general thoughts on the importance of science communication, which, as Juliana has already mentioned, is I think on our minds these days given events. So it's clear that there is in the United States at the moment an all-out assault by the current administration on science in general, as well as many other sort of aspects of culture, where the institutions of scientific funding and research have just been vandalized. They're really being torn down for no good reason that we can tell, except a sort of animus against the perceived elitism of scientists and researchers in a way that is just sort of baffling To me, although it's a classic out of the playbook of demagogues and fascists everywhere, is to attack universities and to attack scientists. And, part of it, I think, it just highlights the fact that scientists need to do work to tell people what they're doing. And really, the history of scientific funding and research in the States is amazing, because after World War II, which was won by scientists, Franklin Roosevelt realized that. He realized the power of science, and with Vannevar Bush, set up the National Science Foundation. And their goal was to take the power that they had seen that science could have and make it an engine of prosperity. And they invested hugely in science since then, up until the present day. And the outcome of that is what we've seen in America leading the economy of the world. And of course, other countries have followed suit. Not anywhere near to the same sort of level of actually investing in science, but that's the model of letting scientists do their job, let them follow their creative instincts, let them research what they think is interesting, and then good things will come out of it. And that's just been true the world over. So to see that being torn apart in the States right now is really horrifying. There are possibilities that could be followed in other parts of the world. So we really need to be vigilant, and we really need to step up, I think, and explain to people not just why a particular scientific topic is interesting, but why science as part of culture is so crucial for just economic prosperity more generally, as well as the sort of loftier ideals of seeking after truth and knowledge. So it's astonishing to see the current administration there, especially people like RFK Jr., rejecting germ theory. I mean, to relitigate, to have to go back in the trenches and relitigate germ theory of all things is absurd, but we have to, like we do, because there's just this morass of misinformation and conspiracy theories that's out there that people are just getting constantly inundated with. And part of the when I was here last year, one of the points that I made was that as scientists, if we're doing our communication, we can't just do it once and think, there, I did it. I did my job, yay. Because the other side just don't stop. It's relentless. So, so it's just a kind of a call to arms, but also, to partly celebrate the prize winners and the other entrants of the competition this year, because those are the people who are going to help do that and bring that message and continue the work that Mary did so well here in Ireland. So, okay, that's my rant. That's my rant over. I did want to say a few words about the theme of this year's competition, which is life. Obviously, big theme, but in many ways, that theme is actually central to my recent book, which Cormac kindly referred to, called Free Agents, which is ostensibly about free will. And really, the question of free will is, how could human beings be in charge of what they're doing? How could anything be up to us? We're just physical beings. We're made out of physical stuff. The stuff in us isn't magic, right? It's just atoms and molecules, and they should obey the laws of physics, just like atoms and molecules in anything else. So where could this power come from, this agency that we have as human beings to do anything if the atoms are just going to do whatever physics says they should do? So that's the theme of the book. But really, the way that I attack that is to actually say, well, look, if physics is going to rule out, the possibility that we could be in charge of anything because it's all deterministic, then actually that's much a deeper problem. That rules out any agency. If we say any living being can do something, well, then that's the same problem is there. And that really highlights this property of living things that I think gets overlooked. It's something that isn't there in textbooks. If you look in biology textbooks, it'll say these are the properties of life. It'll be things like metabolism and reproduction and locomotion and maybe other things like that. But what it won't say is agency, right? The thing that we really sort of take for granted is that living things do things. They're not just caught up in happenings, they make things happen. They act in the world. And that's something that no other non-living things can do. So really a crucial kind of fundamental property of life that gets overlooked, but that is absolutely fundamental to everything about. And this gets back to a point that's even deeper, which is to think about, well, just what does it mean to be a living thing? And this was a question that Erwin Schrödinger took up when he came to Dublin. So he was invited to Dublin by Eamon de Valera. He was fleeing a fascist regime that was doing all the plays in the playbook that we're seeing replayed these days. He came to Dublin, to Trinity, and actually to Dias as well, I think. And of course he was
not to Trinity.
To Dias and not to Trinity. I won't overclaim him. So he was a quantum physicist, of course, famous for the Schrödinger equation, among other things. But he turned his attention to this question: what is life? And he gave a series of lectures in Trinity in 1943 and wrote a very influential book called What is Life?, which is really, really worth reading. It's a small little book, and it inspired lots of biologists afterwards, including, for example, Watson and Crick, who discovered the structure of DNA. So he was puzzled by this phenomenon. When you look at a living thing, there's a puzzle from a physicist's point of view, which is how the hell do they stay organized, right? The thing about organisms is they're organized. They're organized matter in a particular pattern that persists through time. And as a physicist, looking at that, you have to ask, why could they be organized? The second law of thermodynamics says that things should get disorganized. To use Yeats's term, things fall apart. So things should just go to equilibrium, become sort of disordered mush if they're left to their own devices. And his insight, of course, was that living things are not left to they're not left to the devices of just the universe. They actually have their own devices. And so his point, I think, in contrast to Juliana's reference to cows not doing any work, was that actually all living things are doing work all the time. They're doing thermodynamic work to keep themselves organized. So that pattern that they have to maintain to be alive, that just is what it is to be alive, is to propagate that pattern that they have into the future. So they're self-organizing, self-sustaining patterns of processes of activity. And that's really where the liveliness comes in. So if we're thinking about agency, and this was where I started this chain of thought, thinking about how organisms do things and how they make things happen, we have to go right back to the question of what it is to be alive in the first place. And that, I think, boils down to the fact that organisms make themselves happen. They don't just act in the world, they keep themselves going in the world, trying their best not to become one with the universe. So this perspective, I think, highlights another key characteristic of life, which is often overlooked, but really crucial, which is that it's precarious. And when we think about some sort of, artificial systems these days, artificial intelligence and so on, the idea that it might become conscious and so on, one of the things that it lacks at the moment is mortality. It doesn't have any stake. It has no skin in the game. You can turn it off and you can turn it on again. It's fine. It doesn't have to do anything to keep itself going. So it doesn't have any goals or purpose in the way that living things do. So that whole dynamical pattern in metabolic and physiological processes is self-organizing and self-sustaining until it isn't, until an organism dies. Right? And that idea that life is precarious and fragile and all the more precious because of that is a theme that really came through in many of the entries that we had this year, but particularly in the two entries that were awarded the prize this year. So on behalf of the judges, Carlin and Anne and the association, it was a huge pleasure, first of all, to judge all of the entries. There was an amazing field, very diverse videos, presentations, essays, as we'll see, a game. And we ended up in the unprecedented situation where we had two entries that we thought were both outstanding and so different from each other that we couldn't separate them, which is why we have, for the first time this year, two awardees of the prize. And those are Kevin O'Leary, who's a graduate student at Trinity College Dublin, and Simran Khatri, who's a graduate student at University College Dublin, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. But I want to say a few words about Kevin's entry. So Kevin's entry was a game called Cascade, a game for saving life as we know it, and clearly highly topical these days. It was a really, really original card game that requires players to work cooperatively to maintain biodiversity across land, wetland, and marine ecosystems. And a single deck contains 95 cards, which encompass several categories, including roles for each player, such as conservationist or policymaker, the species present in each of the ecosystems considered in the game, policy measures that aim to protect the environment, negative impacts such as oil spills or plastic pollution, public figures associated with combating climate change, such as Mary Robinson and Greta Thunberg. I never thought I would have the chance to play Mary Robinson in a game. And two devilish cascade cards, which immediately worsen a given situation when they're drawn. So just like real life. Kevin devised an intricate set of rules that dictate how the game is played, and we were discussing earlier whether it's been played, and it has. You said there's a little there to do on the game, but yeah, I'm sure it'll iron out. The interesting thing is that there can be no individual winner. It's a cooperative game. Everybody sinks or swims together. So either everyone wins and biodiversity is maintained, or total ecosystem collapse occurs and everyone loses. Cheer. We all thought this was really clever, brilliant, looked like great fun. We're all dying to play it, but really a brilliant way of capturing the complexities of ecosystems, where that precariousness is now shared in the dynamics of the system. Right? It's not just in an individual life form, it's in the relations between all of those and the interdependencies that characterize a stable ecosystem, but that also have some fragilities to them that can be toppled in these kinds of cascades. And of course, it's vulnerable, especially to the effects of climate change. So hugely important, as well as looking like lots of fun. I just want to say, I teach a module in Trinity called Systems, the Science of Everything. It's a little bit megalomaniacal sort of title, but that's what it is. The point of that module is to abstract away from any particular discipline or topic, biology, economics, business, whatever it is, and see the abstract principles that are at play in any complex system. So things like network theory and dynamical systems and game theory, and loads of other sorts of aspects like that, information theory and so on, that you can see those principles apply in many kinds of systems. So I would love my students to play this game in class, because it's a way for them to experience those principles, right? By actually living them out, by playing them out. So it's different from me just telling them, or them sort of running some simulations on a computer. I think it would be absolutely a fantastic teaching tool and communication tool. So I want to say, Kevin, congratulations. Fantastic work. I look forward to playing the game sometime. And I'd like you I'd like to invite you up to receive your award.
Thank you.
Don't worry, I won't speak for as always our previous speakers, but I just want to say thank you very much to the association, in particular to Cormac, to Brian, to Kevin, to Anne, and everybody involved in the awards. It is a huge honour to have your work acknowledged at all, but it's especially a greater honour to have it acknowledged by an association that believes in and promotes science communication, which is something that I care a lot about. And when thinking about the idea of the game and where it came from, on the game side of things, I often think with science communication, we need to constantly be more inventive and think of broader and newer ways to reach wider audiences. And as Juliana mentioned in her talk, like, science to be for everyone has to reach everyone. And sometimes I feel that very traditional forms might not always reach every audience. And a game is a great opportunity to do that, because anyone can play a game. Once you make the rules simple enough. And when it comes to the topic of the game and the climate crisis, as an environmental scientist, I'm constantly always a bit stressed about climate change and the threats of it, and how it feels like we're constantly not doing enough. And again, in Gianna's talk, when we look at these points in history, it seems like this always happens, and this is just our latest challenge of something that, you know, I think we can overcome it, but it does require everybody to kind of buy in and to understand. It's filling that gap that I really hope my work at least does something towards helping. Board games, of course, are a big love of mine, mainly from, you know, many wet Irish summers and nothing else to do, so lots of board games. And so I do hope at some point in the future that the game will take on a bit of a life of its own, and I hope that everybody who has an interest in playing it will certainly get to play it. And once again, thank you very much for the awards.
Okay, so the second winning entry was by Simran Khatri from UCD, and it's an essay titled "In Life, for Life, a monologue from the heart of a young researcher." And this was a deeply thoughtful and personal essay that explores the tensions between her passion for science and her deep sense of unease with the use of animals in biological research. Her compassionate observation of mice being prepared for an experiment captures her disquiet. And I quote, "I watched their tiny bodies being weighed, marked, and injected. I watched them twitch under anesthesia. The lives that weighed 25 grams or so looked fragile, helpless, and entirely at our mercy. And I realized then, science isn't always clean glassware and elegant data. Sometimes it's heavier, quieter, a little more alive than you'd expect." I think you get the sense from that of how honest that is, and how she arrived at that point. There was a journey there that she went on, that she told us about. And I was really moved by it, actually. And plus, she's just a fabulous writer. I mean, it was really, really well written. So it was a joy to read, but also, you know, deeply affecting. And, you know, as someone who's worked personally with animals throughout my career, I've struggled with those issues as well. You know, we have, on the one hand, the fact that to make progress in biology, to understand how life works, and especially to understand how sometimes it doesn't work, you know, to make progress in medical things, all of the sort of progress that science has given us that's sort of being firstly denied and then under threat these days. That kind of animal research is required, but at the same time, it brings a really heavy burden and responsibility to do it ethically, to do it with, you know, due consideration and care. And I think she captured that tension really well. It wasn't a diatribe, it wasn't a polemic. It was really her felt experience of living that kind of contradiction and tension. So it was quite touching, personally, to see her recount that so honestly, how she navigated those issues in her engagement with research. Unfortunately, she's out of the country and unable to attend, but she has sent a short video, which Brian is going to run from his laptop. And just as you're getting that set up, maybe we can just congratulate someone.
Hi, I'm Simran. I study pharmacology at UCD, and I'm truly honored to be the joint recipient of the Mulvihill Award this year. And many congratulations to the other awardee. I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to all the judges and the Mulvihill Association for this wonderful recognition. Also like to thank my parents for making this possible. And as an international student in Ireland, I had only started to learn all the new things, and I'm so glad that I got to learn about Mary and all her fascinating contributions that she's made, and how she's tried to teach us something new along the lines of her brilliant pieces of work. And I must mention that something that has stuck with me is her habit of trying to make every hour of the day count. I think I read this phrase last year, and it has stayed with me ever since, and I try to utilize my time the best way. And once again, I'm incredibly grateful, and I really hope that Mary's legacy continue to inspire the young scientists and the years to come. And about my piece specifically, I tried to narrate my story, my research journey of how I feel and believe that there is a need for change in terms of shifting from animal experiments, which of course incur the cost of animal lives, towards a more technology driven and modern approach. And I think I've learned a lot while drafting my submission for this entry because being involved in research projects with all these complex themes and having all the nice data and graph plots is definitely rewarding. But I think what is more important is being able to communicate the idea in a way that is understandable, meaningful, and influential to a wider audience that might not specialize in that field. And I'm so grateful for getting the opportunity to apply. And I'm really sorry for not being present in the ceremony. But I previously thought I'm going to come to Ireland to spend the summer, but I'm going somewhere else now. So I'm really, really sorry for not being there. But I really hope that I get to meet all the members of the Mary Mulvihill Association on some other occasion sometime soon. Once again, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so that almost winds up the proceedings for the evening. But before we go downstairs for refreshments, I've got a couple of tasks I need to perform. But first of all, I'd like to say that I haven't seen Kevin's game, but I'm really looking forward to seeing it, playing it. For any of you who knew Mary, the notion of a game where there are no individual winners and no team wins, that is just so Mary. She would have loved this game. I'm sure she'd have been promoting it at every available opportunity and giving it to all her friends for Christmas. So I think it's very appropriate that you won the Mary Mulvihill Award this year. One thing I want to do is I have a couple of gifts for our speakers this evening. I have a copy of Ingenious Ireland. You may already have a copy, of course. Now, Kevin gets a choice. Last year, you got Ingenious Ireland.
Yes, I have that.
So you may have another copy of this if you wish. Alternatively, we have another book here called Our Keys to the City, which is, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's a biography, I think it's something like 80 biography of women who have contributed to Dublin. Mary's in the book.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
Copies of the press release for everybody in the audience.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. Copies of the press release at the side here that Cormac has prepared, so if you wish to take one, that's leave. So before we go downstairs, the last thing I want to do is I just want to thank everyone involved in the award, Cormac for maintaining it, and everyone in the committee for all the work they put in, and all the support we have from the members of the association. And thank you all for coming this evening.